Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome into Casual Friday, where today we're starting with an esports Q&A. I'm back here. I'm Gormizer. Hello. But in front of me are the people who actually have the answers. We've got Cooper on this side, Hindu on this side.
Hello.
I'm really excited for this, and I will say, because I already looked in like the Discord. There's already a lot of questions in there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions in chat as well. While we're going through all this, feel free to ask them. If it's something that I don't think is going to be covered, I will try to get it in there, but I have seen quite a few that we are going to go over immediately, so it's going to be like, let's just get the information out. And speaking of information out, maybe the smartest one and at least the best one up front, we already said when tickets were going to go on sale in terms of like a date. It's September 13th, which is actually a week from today if you are watching this live right now. But the good news is that we have times for you so that when that Friday finally rolls around, you can pick those up, as well as what you're going to be getting with those tickets, as well as the pricing and everything like that. So, again, the event is happening January 17th through 19th, 2025. That's when you're going to want to make sure your calendar is clear so that you can get there to go to the Founders Tournament live, the HyperX Arena in Las Vegas. And as we throw the graphic up, boom, there you can see we've got the price, September 13th, $299 for a limited time. Then it will go up to about $380. It's going to include an event t-shirt, Twitch drops, which what is going to be included in those drops is just going to be revealed at a later date, and the Dark Heart Zeus skin, which is a classic skin in SMITE 2, and it will be made purchasable in-game with Legacy Gems at a much later time, but with this, you can get it in this ticket. We'll take a look at that in a second. Just want to make sure I throw it out there. On September 13th, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, and 5 p.m. CEST, which is Central European, or as Hindu said, 4 p.m. real time, I think is what you would
Correct.
say.
4 p.m. real time.
So those are going to be the times. Again, you want to make sure that you are there. You can scan the QR code, go to the place. We have the stuff set up for emails so you can get alerted when things are happening. But just be ready and make sure that you are ready for those. And since I said the fine details and stuff, we can just look.
You did. We do have the skin to show you guys
the Dark Heart, the Dark Heart Zeus skin, which I have discovered today is not easy to say, but this is the skin that you're going to be able to get again, and it's going to be across both classic skin and SMITE 2. So eventually you'll be able to purchase it with some Legacy Gems, but you get this with your ticket. It's a great time to be able to go, especially just to get a trip to Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, mention the tickets again. I mean, a few people have been like, "Oh my god, the pricing," but the pricing is relatively even to what we've normally done for most of our events. On top of that, it looks crazy, but you break it down across 3 days and it's multiple. It's like 8 hours to 10-hour days consistently is where the price point's from. And obviously you're in Vegas too, and there is a cost of that as well. But yeah, we're excited about doing the event. The price, I don't think we're going to see it come to the higher price because you guys are crazy most of the time and sell out these tickets in moments. So hopefully we get the same on September 13th.
And hey, actually, you know what? To double down on like the need to be ready, that is a Friday the 13th. You don't want to be the one with bad luck.
Think about that, yeah.
You want to make sure that you get your ticket. Also, the fun thing is you're going to get your ticket, or if you do get your ticket that day, the great news is that the Founder Series literally starts the next day. The open bracket is on the 14th. So like immediately the lead up to the event is going to kick off. We're going to be watching a lot of SMITE 2 in the esports, and it's going to be it's just going to be a whole host of fun. I'm genuinely super excited to get back to just casting and watching SMITE 2, especially after last week when we did the
open one. Yeah,
the open. It's just fun to see, especially I've seen more teams getting announced, teams that didn't even participate like last week, that I'm really, really excited to see like how they're going to work together, as well as just what God combinations. That's next week talk. But since we're talking Founder Series, since we've told you about tickets, we told you about price, we told you about time. If you've read the blogs, you know kind of generally some of the format. If you watched, I believe, was it last week? 2 weeks ago, I think, we had like a kind of quick and dirty, hey, just here's like the quick rundown. This is going to be a little more in depth. But the biggest thing that wasn't really talked about, was kind of hinted at the last time, was other regions, right? We had talked about NA, we had talked about EMEA. And there had been tons of questions, Cooper, about, hey, what about LATAM? What about Brazil? What about, Oceania and APAC and that entire region? And the good news is we're doing stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we're really happy to talk about the international regions today. Like Gore mentioned, we did go pretty in depth about North America and EMEA a couple weeks ago, but for today, we want to talk about specifically LATAM, Brazil, and APAC. So right now for LATAM, we'll start there. They will be part of the Founder Series officially. Basically, we kind of want to start at a ground level, just talking a little bit about our philosophy with these international regions. So we haven't done international competition in quite some time, at least local to those areas, right? We've had players from all over the world compete in the SMITEPro League over the past couple years, but we really wanted to give them something within their own region that they can play in and grow as SMITE2 Esports continues to grow as well. So with LATAM, we will be having a qualification path for them to actually send 2 teams to the knockout stage. We'll talk about exactly how that will flow a little later in this Q&A, but again, 2 teams will actually get spots from Latin America to join the NA and EMEA teams here at the knockout stage and hopefully qualify for Vegas. So, yeah, this is the first time that Latin America will have a proper spot given to them in a number of years, and we're really excited for it. So, speaking of that, though, I think we do have a couple other regions to talk about.
Yeah, obviously, Coop's there just going over LATAM for you. I get the news of the Brazil and APAC situation. So, we alluded to a little bit, as Coop was saying, about we were looking at the South American region of exactly what we could do for them. We were trying to potentially give Brazil an opportunity to come out to the Vegas land too. Unfortunately, due to visa constrictions, we're not going to be able to give them the opportunity to come to this land. Basically, just because the turnaround time on visa is just too long. However, it's not something that we want to have continue to be a problem in the future. So the goal is to get ahead of that to make sure we can introduce more international regions. And then also APAC. APAC, we mentioned them. We do want to work with APAC. We're not writing off the scene. The game's not even fully established yet. We do want to show love to both Brazil and to APAC as well. So specifically what we're going to be doing for Brazilian players and for the APAC region, we're going to be doing tournaments for you guys as well during this fall for your own regional play, which we'll talk about pricing for those a little bit later. But just that's kind of the update on the region. So LATAM will be involved in the Vegas qualification path. We'll showcase that later, and as well as APAC and Brazil getting regional events for those guys. As we move on towards SMITE2 being fully established and fully released, we are going to continue to work in those regions where it makes sense. We didn't want you guys thinking we're writing anybody off at this stage. It's not the case. It's never been the case. If there's an appetite for esports and we can fund it, we're going to help support where we can.
Yeah, and I think one more note on that too. We talk about APAC. That's kind of a new term in SMITE2.
Yeah. I'm glad you're doing this because I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So APAC's kind of a new term that we've never really classified in SMITE2 before. We've always just said Oceania. Keep in mind these kind of denominations might not stick later down the line either, right? We may separate some regions. We may do LATAM North and South instead of just one big region. As we gain feedback and we kind of see what the appetite is in those regions, we'll adjust accordingly and kind of make changes from there.
Yeah.
As it turns out, world's real big and it's real easy to sometimes you can group stuff up, sometimes it needs to be separated, all that stuff. Also, and this is worth noting because we are going to have the Q&A, and I'd mentioned, Twitch chat.
Yeah.
Go to discord.gg/SMITE Esports. There's a text channel that you can throw questions in, but we're also going to take some live callers later. So if you have a burning question that you really, really want to ask, there is a Q&A waiting room.
Yeah. We're dicing with death, but also the person calling him to say something is dicing with death is how I'll put it. Yeah.
We'll see what happens with that. And then the other thing, again, we had talked a little bit about format and schedule. Again, we got really deep in some NA and EMEA, although some details that we're going to get more into today that we glossed over at the time because it was still trying to kind of figure out what the future of that looked like in 2.5, 5 months for some of them. But also just looking at the concerns that some of the community had specifically about the format, and up front, Coop, there was some questions about the fact that the open bracket for Swiss, that very first stage 1, as we've been calling it, that starts next Saturday, was only 2 weeks long before Swiss starts up.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair point, right? We don't need to hide away from the fact that is a short qualification period. 2 weeks is really rough, especially for kind of a new game coming out. There's new balance changes happening every day, and we're on a really quick turnaround for patch schedule. So we get it. We know that that's short. But we did also alleviate that concern by adding 5 more open bracket weeks during stage 2, which goes along the Swiss stage. So if you kind of didn't really hit the ground running, or you wanted to make some changes to your roster, we have that stage 2B to also compete in. So don't fret if you don't make the Swiss stage. This is why we've built the format this way, so you always have a chance to qualify back in through another stage. And then in the future, we'll always look to make those qualification periods a little bit more longer if we can. Really, it was just time constraints this time, which is the reason why it was so short.
And I especially with this graphic up, it's kind of a nice reminder, like the big benefit of getting into Swiss is that you're guaranteed stage 3 or 4, right? Like you're still in the tournament no matter how things go while you're up in the Swiss. Whereas in the open bracket, it is, the Wild West out there. It's just like, if you get enough points, if you're in the top 8, you get to move on. If you're not, it's just unfortunate for you. So like there's a lot of opportunities. And I think in the past, we've even like alluded to old teams. They were Panthera at the time, but everyone would remember them as Epsilon or NRG, but like teams that joined late and then just kind of ran the show for the rest of the year. That is always something that we're looking for in the open bracket. So I'm very confident that it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be really
Don't get us
fun.
wrong as well. I think the one thing to establish as well is we don't have any past experience from people playing Smite 2. We obviously we've got Smite 1 pros, but we've also got a lot of new players that are going to be playing Smite 2 as well. Just because you were a pro player in Smite 1 does not necessarily mean you're entitled to be the top end of Smite 2, which means we don't have seeding for the open bracket. And I think that's where some of the concern is that there's no real true seeding we can do. So there could be a matchup of SOT versus, I don't know, Paul's team or something like that in round 1, week 1, and then one of those teams is struggling to make the Swiss. But that's part of the fun and excitement in a weird way and gives opportunities for some of the younger teams to get some experience.
I mean, this is also why we did point values to those open weeks too, right? Like we didn't give straight qualification spots in the Swiss for making it just to the top 8. That way, if you do actually do a little worse in week 1 or even week 2, you just have to play better in one of those opposite weeks to gain a little bit higher of a point value, and that should help you out.
I also, and this is just because of what you had said, Hindu, but last week we got to see, like, there was a matchup like that happened, I want to say in semis, and it was like, oh my god, I can't believe we're getting this right now. Like this is a grand finals level matchup that would have been in Smite 1, and now we're getting it. So I'm really, again, excited to see what those open brackets are going to provide for us. The other thing that kind of came up, and it was specifically I think about Swiss, and maybe realistically in the open bracket as well, but Coop, there were some concerns specifically, I believe, in like EMEA, but we've added some other regions, so maybe there as well, but getting to the total of 16 teams to provide those brackets.
Yeah, we definitely hear the concern. I think if we look at the past couple weekends of tournaments, there's a fair concern there. We haven't had hundreds of teams sign up, but I also think that those alpha tournaments, limited prizing, there wasn't a ton to play for there. Now that we have a direct path and people know what they're playing for, they have that chance to go to Vegas, I think we should automatically see a couple more teams sign up. Additionally, we also just looked at previous data that we had. The very first Smite 2 Esports Smite 2 tournament that we ran, we actually had like 30 plus teams in EMEA, and then we got up to the 60 or 70 number for North America. I expect we'll probably get around those numbers again, if not more. We really think that people are going to want to compete, and like Gore said earlier, some of the rosters we've been seeing out of EMEA are wild, like seeing a lot of returning players, and these powerhouse teams are going to come out and play. So yeah, no concern. For what I will say, Graham, I don't even know if you remember this because it's been so many whiteboards. We at one time were actually exploring a 32 team like second stage, and we kind of for Swiss, so we kind of pulled that back. So just so you know, we're looking at those concerns. It's nothing that we're falling on deaf ears for, but
we have to plan for the fact that we might get a lot of people that want to play. Let's just say 64 teams, but we also have contingency plans of we will change formats where needed if the amount of teams signing up are a little bit lower. It might be less people qualifying for stage 3 or something like that, but we'll continue to adapt where possible if team sizes or scope becomes too big, too small. We're also got a concern of like, what if we get 128 teams one week? How are we going to do that? The admins are going to hate themselves.
Yeah, we'll make specifically.
Sitting all day. I mean, last week I think it was like, and on short notice, surrounded by a ton of other like announcements that were going on, we still had a really big bracket to go through for both regions. So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty hopeful for that. But that's like open bracket, I guess, mostly, and then maybe a little bit on Swiss. And speaking of Swiss, Hindu, the seeding, and realistically, maybe a little bit of how Swiss works for some people, but realistically, the seeding from Swiss and including the GSL groups and like how that all melds together and becomes one was a really big question people
It
had.
was, and we kind of held off on it just so you guys could get the baseline of how the stages work and flow into each other, first of all. Once we get to the seeding portion, which is kind of what I touched on with the open bracket play, we don't have any true seeding, but when we're having 2 tournaments, and if we bring up what I'm going to look at here, which is the open bracket format first, but after the open bracket, we go to the Swiss system, we're going to have this situation where we're going to have teams from 2A and 2B meeting in stage 3 to compete, but how are we going to seed those? We've got a bit more information for you today just to kind of break those down. So realistically, when we actually look at the seeding of those, we should be able to have the graphic, hopefully, if production's ready for it, question mark. But yeah, the actual bracket for the studio, for the actual GSL group stages is kind of what we want to go over, which is to basically taking the Swiss teams. So if you can just bring up the Swiss format real quick, production. And then we can just look over that so I can give you an explanation rather than just see my ugly face. There we go.
There it is.
So Swiss bracket, obviously what's going to end up happening here is that teams fall down, where it says at the bottom right, 3 losers advance to stage 3. So they're the red teams at the bottom there, the teams that have gone from 0-2 to 0-3. 1-2 will go to 1-3 and 2-2 will go to 2-3. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually break those tiebreakers between those teams based off what you can see on the left. So the 2 teams that end up 0-3 in that first column, it will do a head-to-head if they played each other, then games played, then points from stage 1, and finally a coin flip. This is just to separate the seeding between them in these little buckets, between whether you're the one of the worst seeds or one of the best seeds. Obviously, teams that have gone 0-3, I'm going to rate a lot lower than a team that's gone 2-3. They've actually won games, they've competed more, but we want to reward those teams. And then once we get from this stage here, you'll see how this flows into the next part of the graphic, which is actually the seeding for stage 3 specifically in these GSL groups. Now, as you'll see with the weight of these groups as well, the rough idea is that we do value OB1, which is the open bracket stage 2B portion people. OB1 and OB2, we value them a little bit higher than the teams that came in at Swiss 7 and Swiss 8, which are the lower end teams that went 0-3. But this was kind of a tricky one, really, Coop, wasn't it? It was to really judge exactly how you would value these teams in the seeding position.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot, and really it was those 4 teams that we always were going back and forth on. I think what it ultimately came down to was how long and how much effort those teams were putting in over the course of the 5 weeks, right? Swiss, yes, you are playing theoretically higher tiered teams,
Correct.
better opponents.
Yeah.
However, if you are an open bracket team, you're playing
5-6 weeks.
5-6. You're playing 5 weeks, but 5-6 matches a day to earn that spot, right? And you have to be, to get that position, you have to be the top team every single week, pretty much. So we just valued it a little bit higher. We're still separating the groups among those 4 teams, but we think this is pretty balanced for the time being.
And one thing to mention on this, just as a final thought really as well, is the fact that we're working with no real seeding to begin with. However, as we do future tournaments going into SMITE 2, we're going to have a little bit more options of how we can seed these people, or at least soft seed in this, but this is the best method we found so far. Obviously, we're down to listen to feedback if people really want to weigh in and go, oh, group 1 looks like a group of death. Well, some of this, if you know ahead of time of where these groups of deaths are, avoid them, or get better. Is just don't get to this stage.
Yeah.
Qualify through Swiss and you'll be good.
Well, and for those, as a brief note, those who don't know what GSL groups are, it's essentially double elim as well. So if you do get in kind of a group of death, you still have that second chance if you lose your first match. So
2 people from each of these groups will qualify through to the next stage, which will be stage 4.
And this one, and this is just because I keep forgetting it, because the sheer the quantity of teams when I remember this detail doubles, because this is across NA and EMEA. This is not just, hey, these 16 teams. This is 32 teams technically that are going to be here, and again, dwindling down to 8 per region then at that point. For the 2 main regions that are going to then move forward. But just remember that if you're watching this and you're in NA, this is going to be something you're experiencing. If you're in EMEA, this is something you're going to be experiencing. The other thing that people were wondering about, because GSL groups, now that we've got the seeding and kind of the format out there, people understand, okay, top 8 will move forward. They're going to join the other 8 from Swiss. They're going into a double elimination bracket for stage 4. And as it turns out, guys, those are pretty straightforward, actually. There's not a lot of questions about the stage 4.
Double elim.
Just double elim, come in with 16, gets limited down to 8. The question was then, or gets limited down, I believe actually even further for some of them, because we adjusted for the other regions, which is, hey, see, still learning. But on top of that, the question was kind of like, okay, going into now this Studio LAN, when we announced, okay, top 3 NA, top 3 EMEA, we've already answered LATAM, that's the other 2, so there's the first question. But there were some other things about the bracket and kind of like why we wanted that format overall, Coop, that people were wondering.
Yeah, so really it came down to how do we make that knockout stage the most competitive as possible. And in order to do that, kind of spinning it back to the double elim at playoffs, it allows us to kind of have that second chance in that bracket to allow teams to kind of flow up and down. If you don't play as well in the upper, you get launched down to the lower. And then obviously we wanted to qualify those 3 teams, and that felt like a good number from NA and EMEA. LATAM having the 2 teams to go to the knockout stage as well. So I believe we have a graphic to actually walk through the knockout stage.
Stage 5.
To kind of talk about the seeding there.
Yeah, so
we're going stage 5.
So everything you're seeing is all tentative. Don't be locked in at Group A is EMEA. LATAM number 2 will be in Group A. These are just mock drafts.
Example.
But essentially the way that this will work is we're going to split those 8 teams that end up coming to the knockout stage into 2 groups. We're going to coin flip between EMEA number 1 and North America number 1 to determine which group they're in. And then we're going to have those teams draft their opposing team's group. So let's just say EMEA number 1 on Group A, they get the coin flip win. They're going to pick the first team that goes into Group B, which will be NA number 1's group. From there, they're going to play a 3-day round robin, best of 3s in those groups, with the 4th team, the bottom team from each of those groups, being eliminated from competition. So their hopes at going to Vegas will essentially end right there.
Yeah.
At that point, we'll go ahead and move them into the next stage of the knockout, which will be a bracket. And the best part about this is it's a double elim bracket, and it's actually the bracket we're going to be playing at Vegas. So if we can bring up that graphic as well, you can see here this is actually our Las Vegas Founder Series championship bracket. We will be playing round 1 at the studio, which allows us to actually have double elimination at a live event for the first time in probably since season 1, maybe
almost
ever.
a decade, actually.
Yeah, a very, very long time. So we'll see the cross-group matches will be played in round 1. Those number 1 seeds from the group will also get a bye into round 2. So they will automatically go to Vegas. They don't have to play until they get there, but we will be playing that first round here in the studio.
Yeah, so too long didn't read. The event in studio will be 4 teams in each group. The number 1 teams will get a bye into the Vegas bracket. The number 2 and 3 teams will face off against the other group in round 1. And the 4th team in each of those groups will be eliminated on going to Vegas. So their journey will stop. So those group play games, Gore, are going to be huge when we get to studio.
And like you said, limits it down to 6, but that gives us the 3 days in Vegas, double elim. A lot of time. That's where round 2, the Group A versus winner of whoever wins that Sunday. Group B versus winner of whoever wins that Sunday. We'll have some losers games. It's actually I'm really excited to see how that's going to shake out, especially because the shift, in venue going into a live crowd, that's always really interesting, especially with this format of tournament.
Yep.
There are going to be some people who have never played in front of a crowd before up on a stage playing in front of a crowd. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you guys, it is a different energy when you have Smite fans, because these guys are rabid and I love it. It's amazing energy.
And quick note on this too, there's always been, I think especially it's kind of ramped up over the past couple of years, this conversation around, do we do single elim? Why can't we do double elim at a live event? Is it fair for the number 1 seeds to kind of get a bye in the first round if we're only inviting a certain number of teams, right? So this too, we'd love to hear your feedback on as we get closer to the event. It's the first time we're doing double elim like this at an event, so please let us know if you like it. There is going to be a lot of pressure on those teams that lose that first round to kind of come right into Vegas and play essentially for their lives, right? So
I realized while we're live on air as an audible, we've not talked about finals because it was showing the bracket.
That's true. Yeah,
this is legit
why
a
you
full
need
on.
to read the blogs.
I know.
Right?
Well, listen,
it's out there.
Sometimes we didn't officially say exactly what our final situation would be here, but we've had a lot of discussion about how you do double elimination and how you resolve the issue with double elimination in a MOBA that feels good to people. We've done variations of it where the team from the upper side gets a game advantage, but I really feel like it kind of squanders some of the excitement. So we're going with a bit of a different method this year. What we're going to be doing is finals will be a best of 5. However, it'll be a bracket reset if the losers round is the one that wins that best of 5, and we'll go into a best of 1 is the idea.
Yeah,
So
for the reset.
For the reset, it'll be a best of one. So if you come from losers and you win, let's just say 3-2 in the first best of 5, you go into a reset where whoever wins that last game will win the entire event. We think it's interesting. We think it keeps the hype rolling rather than doing a best of 3. Obviously, people like the idea of a best of 3 or a best of 5, but it becomes more of an endurance sport rather than a MOBA in my mind when you go past so many games in a single day.
Especially if you're doing, because, start with a best of 5.
Yeah.
You go all 5. We have seen those. I'm going to take this last Worlds for an example, because we started, 3 p.m.?
Yeah.
It was over at 8:30.
Yeah.
It went 5.5 hours.
That was the distance.
And if we had a best of 3 reset after that, and it goes another 3, we could have been there until midnight.
We've done best of 7s before here in the studio for Pro League play. And for those who remember Alpha Jackal, the old rival coach, I think they ended up actually winning that best of 7, and he came up to me and was like, "Don't ever make me do this again." It was just too many games in a row. So this should give a good balance.
It's a good medium.
Yeah, it's also important to note
point.
that not every round in this bracket will be best of 5. I believe it's round 2.
Yeah, round 2.
Uppers is best of 5, and then the losers will be best of 3 up until we get to losers round 3. But we'll obviously have all those details in the blog.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is actually a really good segue, because that's a lot of games to play.
It is.
Including all of the games across multiple regions that were just mentioned, including the fact that we've now announced 3 extra regions. That's a lot of SMITE that's going on all around the world, usually around the same time as well. So Hindu, there were some questions about what's getting broadcast.
Yeah, honestly, from a broadcast standpoint right now, the goal really is to broadcast as much as we can, but we're really going to focus in on EMEA and NA, just due to time zone constraints and stuff like that as well. But obviously, if you guys want to stream your games from other regions, you're more than welcome to. We're not putting any block on you guys streaming your games. I would advise you would doing a delay, just because these games being live, you don't want to get in any trouble there, and it's not our fault if you don't delay your broadcast, but you're more than welcome to stream your games from your regions. When it comes to the actual event too, just Swiss alone, each region's going to have multiple Swiss games on the same day. We're going to broadcast as many as we can, but realistically, we're not going to be able to broadcast everything. That's just the unfortunate nature of just going so wide. Eventually, hopefully, we can evolve and get smaller teams activated and going too, to be able to run more games coexistently behind the scenes. But if you're an amateur caster or an amateur person that wants to get involved and do some, feel free to. There's nothing blocking you whatsoever. You can feel to reach out to us if you want some more support, and if we can support you in some way, we'll let you know. But you're more than welcome to take on some games that we're not doing. We'd like to broadcast everything, but at the moment the game's still growing, so it makes it a bit trickier. We'll get to demo play and stuff like that eventually, where we can even showcase more throughout the week. But mainly our goal is to be live every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, while these tournaments are live with you.
Yeah, and another note on those the international region as well. We are also working with local partners in that area who may also have the ability to broadcast those games as well. So we'll keep you posted on what those Twitch streams will be, and obviously who we end up working with in those regions, but just keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. And I want to, just because you mentioned it, but if you're an amateur caster in anywhere, in any of those regions or just anywhere, that is the best practice. That's before I got hired here. That was a lot of what we would do is on SBL days or anything like that. It was just, all right, we're going to go to the feed. We're either going to mute it, or we're going to try and spectate our own games, or we're going to do something and then just cast over it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for everybody to be able to watch whatever games you want to watch, and kind of be like an unofficial B stream if you really, really want to. And it'll be very, very fun. And again, it's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of SMITE. You're not going to be wanting, I think, is after next week is going to be the good sampler as we start to get into it. 3 weeks in, you're going to be all right, I've got all the competitive SMITE I could ever want. Which, speaking of the other regions and things like that, I know a lot of people, especially those who are looking to compete as opposed to just spectate, we're really curious about pricing, because I think we've discussed a little bit about pricing, the whole thing for Vegas itself, right, being the 300K, that's been out there. But the other things, Hindu, you had mentioned, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but some pricing for Swiss, as well as pricing in some of these other regions. So Coop, very specifically, actually, the Swiss pricing, we can finally say what's happening there.
Yeah, this is really all anyone ever cares about. So we'll go into money. Yeah. So talking about NA and EMEA first, really we did want some sort of benefit to playing in those first 2 open bracket weeks, qualifying into the Swiss. We know you're playing some higher tier opponents as well, some better opponents than would be in the open bracket, and for doing that, we wanted to reward you for being a top team. So our kind of breakdown for Swiss, and I think we have a graphic for that as well. We will be doing doing $1,500 per team for first, $1,250 per team for second. And then if you're the third, fourth, and fifth place team in the Swiss to qualify, you're going to get $750 per team. So, a little bit of a bump. You definitely want to come in that first and second two-team slot to qualify. That way you get the most prizing there. And then, of course, the last three spots, we didn't forget about you either. You will also get 16,000 diamonds for...
Wait, we're giving 16,000 diamonds to the guys...
I was just going to say, it's your decision, so you're being real generous. Yeah.
A little bit too much. 8th place getting 16,000 diamonds. They just go 0-3 and get paid diamonds. That's a joke.
Basically, yeah. I mean, I'd do it. So for those last three places, you'll get 16,000 diamonds. You'll be able to buy some awesome stuff in Smite 2 with that. And then, of course, for Stage 2B, which is going to be happening along the same time as the Swiss, we also have diamonds broken out for you as well. So 16,000 for first place, second place 8,000, third place 4,000. And then one note I'll call out here for both Stage 1 open bracket and Stage 2 open bracket is we're actually going to be giving any team that competes and plays one match.
They have to play.
They have to play a single match. Yeah. You have to finish it. You can't load in and surrender it 1 minute. Yeah. You have to play an actual match.
I'll take diamonds.
You will get 250 diamonds just for competing. So if that wasn't incentive enough, I'm not sure what is at this point. Make sure that you guys grab your 4 friends, sign up and compete. And who knows? It's a new game. You might even qualify for Vegas, right? So definitely check out that pricing.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure with the Swiss pricing as well, like there was an extra reason to play in the Swiss and not qualify for the Open. That's why there's money on the line there a little bit more. And obviously you are still playing to qualify to Vegas too. There's still the $300,000 on the line
extra
as part of Vegas, but this is just a tantalizing taste of being involved. You will get something for doing well in Swiss, even if you go on to fail in the next stage.
Yeah, you get money and straight to Stage 4. Like that's actually really good as far as things go. I actually, and I really like this, just to reiterate, like the 250 diamonds per team just for competing, both in Stage 1, but also in Stage 2B. Like that's...
Yeah.
You can show up and, you know what, maybe luck of the draw for the random seeding, you go up against like Sat's team first and maybe things don't look too hot for you.
Well, you can also see what it's like against the best teams as well. Like, if you get draw against SOT teams, you're like, oh, this is why they're so good.
Or maybe you drag it out to 40 minutes and you push them against the edge and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, we've got way more going on.
And even if you didn't, you feel like you got something, right? You can put that towards an Ascension Pass or something else in game. So the 250 diamonds is really good. Also, that this breakdown for prizing minus the Swiss cash prizing obviously is every week of open bracket. So just keep that in mind. It's not just the number one team after all 5. You can earn this diamond amount every time you play.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Wait, that gets really high really fast. That is like $80,000 diamonds, something like that per team. If you get first every single week, that would be insane. So there's a challenge for somebody. If you want a lot of diamonds and to be able to buy so many skins, there's a good way to do it.
God, that's not all. That's just more info.
Yeah, that's just NA and EMEA.
About
LATAM.
Yep. So LATAM, we obviously announced that they're going to get 2 spots at the knockout stage. So that's really a big prizing amount for them. But they too also have 5 weeks of open bracket, so we will be giving them diamonds as well. Very similar breakdown to what we saw in North America and EMEA. And then we'll also be putting the 250 diamonds per team just for competing. Same sort of rules. Make sure you finish your match and play a good game to get that diamond amount. And then, of course, we also have Brazil and APAC, which are being introduced in the Founder Series as well. Because they do not have a spot into the Founder Series Championship, like Graham mentioned earlier, we will be attaching a $5,000 prize pool to the playoffs of Brazil and APAC, which will be 2 weeks of closed double elimination bracket. So first place will earn $2,500, and then second $1,500, third, fourth $500 per team. So good chunk of change there to just kind of form a team and play, and of course you'll also get the diamonds for the open bracket as well.
That's a lot. Maybe I move and start competing. Actually, the other thing that was discussed, though, because that's going to cover the prizing for each of the individual either segments or, admittedly, kind of the tournament as a whole. If you are making it past any of those other stages, then you're playing in the 300K tournament. And so good for you. But Hindu, what has been mentioned and is still kind of being formulated was a bounty board at one point to maybe try and earn something else on the side.
Yeah, I mean, bounty board, we're going to be working towards that. Obviously, for context, the bounty board idea is there's going to be achievable things that you guys can do while playing the game in each of your regions. I'm trying to make sure every region has the ability to get involved. But stuff like the first pentakill, I'll give $1 of value to. All you have to do is send in proof or send proof in that we can confirm that you weren't cheating or something like that. There was no misconstrued stuff, or it's been broadcast already. But expect in the next week or so, I'll release a bounty board of things that you can achieve by just playing the game. It might be stuff like the most kills in a game throughout this period, the least deaths over a period of games as well, where you can achieve the Paul achievement, I guess is what we call that one. But yeah, we'll be looking to do some sort of like bounty board system that you guys can try and get involved in. Just for playing your normal games, you may end up winning something that you didn't realize you could have as an individual rather than just as a team as well. So keep an eye on that.
And since this isn't solidified, if you have ideas, send them our way. Please tag it to us. Send it in the Discord.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be part of the bounty board.
Turns out at least 2 of the ones that I have incentivized potentially feeding and might not make it onto the bounty board. So sorry, triple doubles out there. It might not happen.
Yeah. Imagine being like 12-0 and 5. Sorry, 12-0 and 10 and going, well, I'm going to die 10 times.
Yeah, guys,
now,
I'm going to run.
so
I'm going to run it down mid 10 times just so I can get some money.
But yeah, we'll update on the bounty board for sure, and obviously that'll become a little bit clearer of when that'll start, the bounty board system, once we announce exactly how people can register for tournaments.
Somebody said, is killing Paul an achievement? And I you know what? Honestly, at this point, it might be.
That could be a good one.
We'll have to see.
Could be a good one.
And you know what? This is a perfect segue into it's early for what we have as the Q&A, but it's a perfect segue into the next thing because somebody asked, how can I join? And Coop, we've got great news about that.
Yeah, perfect timing. So we're actually, signups are open, and we're happy to announce our competition platform and operations partner, which will be Rally Cry. They'll be working with us on all of the Latin America and Brazil admin operations, and then, of course, hosting all of our competitions on their website as well. You can see the graphic here at the bottom. You'll see rallycry.gg/SMITE2. If you go ahead and head over there, all competitions for all regions are actually open right now. So just keep a note on that. Gore, if you actually want to bring up, I think we have a preview of it too.
Yeah, I have it open. And I'm going to tell you guys, Coop like earlier said, hey, if you just want to navigate to a competition page so you can show the register, without him saying any more than that, I found it. So hopefully you can, but we're also going to show it because this is going to be like your homepage, and you can already see things that show up in your feed. I think it looks slick. But then you click competitions, like you had mentioned, they're all right here.
Yep.
And you can just choose one. I'll click NA.
And sign up.
Bada boom.
Click register.
You click register. It'll give you the rules. You accept the tournament rules, and then it'll ask you, new team. Or if your team's already in there, you can just go ahead and sign up as your existing team as well.
Yeah, I believe the LATAM and Brazil, we didn't announce just yet, but it's kind of already out there on this website anyway. But LATAM and Brazil will start the same time as stage 2 for EMEA and NA.
It'll start when stage 2 begins. You'll have the same 5-week kind of dates as the Swiss and the open brackets there. And then your 2 weeks of closed double elimination will happen during the LCQ weeks for NA and EMEA.
Yep.
So, but if you need details on all those dates, they're on this page already. I believe the only ones that actually aren't is APAC. Don't worry, I hear you. They'll be up in the next 5 minutes. So you'll be able to register, but it's probably 2 a.m. for you anyway. So I'm not worried. But yeah, you'll see all the formats, the times. If you scroll down a little bit as well, Gore, you'll actually see a full calendar of dates for registration. And then the check-in begins. Awesome. So just keep a note on this. Make sure to bookmark it. This is where we will host all of our competitions through the end of the year and through the Vegas tournament. So real excited about it.
So yeah, go register now. And sorry, Coop, in advance for you having to go remove you from NA where I've now signed you up.
I did it 12 times last night. So.
Should I get free diamonds?
You can go sign up. Again, it's rallycry.gg/SMITE2. Make your profile. I probably have a team ready as well. But then you can go. And the fact that it has all of the information, I'm saying this as the person who wrote majority of the blogs, but this is probably going to be a lot easier and more digestible for you.
Yeah.
So maybe just come here, read it, and figure it out. But you can always go to SMITEsports.com and look at more.
One thing I'll call out specifically on this is there's a little link there right at the top that says, please read and complete. the complete Founder Series rule set here. I've received a lot of questions, just a little bit down, Gore, the hyper.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, literally the one that I was on for.
Yeah, exactly. So I've received a lot of questions from players around what the roster rules will be, how can we swap out subs during these open bracket weeks, what time they take place. Read this rule set, please. It has all the information about how many subs you can have when the roster changes are going to take place. So definitely give that a check out.
Here's your pricing breakdown. It's all here. Turns out you were accurate. And with that,
it's question time.
It's question time.
I did see one actually in chat right now. I'm going to steal your thunder while you
go for it.
T-Dog just asked in chat as well, what's the rules on mixed region teams that have LATAM players but play in NA? It's a good question, and it's something we've already kind of thought about.
Yeah, and just brought up the rules. So, yeah, good segue. So we're kind of sticking to what we've done in the past in saying that any player can compete in any region that they want, regardless of where they're at. Like, the ping risks that you're going to have to deal with by being a Latin America player and potentially playing in North America. That's not going to change. But we do have certain restrictions around it. So essentially during the first 2 open bracket weeks while you're playing, you can freely move between regions as you want. The only restriction we have is that if 2 tournaments are happening at the same time, you can't be signed up on 2 different teams in 2 different regions if they're both starting at 11, on the same day. But once you qualify for the Swiss stage or any part of stage 2, you are actually locked to that region. Yeah. So you kind of have a little bit of free mobility during those first couple weeks to figure out what region makes the most sense for you. But immediately after that is when you'll be locked to that region.
Now I know, and there have been a couple questions along this line, so I'm going to try to group them up. But what are the criteria for determining? And this is because a lot of these regions have questions, but like determining what makes it like a success after all of this, as well as like plans to try and maybe further grow those regions in the future beyond this, or is this the testing ground, right, to figure it out?
Yeah. This definitely is the testing ground. I think there's a number of factors. I'm not going to be able to say all of them on this Q&A, right? But I think registrations is a big one, right? Obviously, if we get 2 teams and they're just battling each other every single competition, that's not great, right? We don't expect that to happen. We picked regions based on things that we've seen on Twitter and our Discord and Reddit that we think will have high participation. But also it's competitiveness, right? Ultimately, we are an esport and we want to see the top teams compete. So if we can see some good competitive matches within those regions as well, even if it is a little bit lower on the sign-up front, if those players are really good and they're actually having good quality matches, I think we defer to that over anything else.
This one, I'm actually really interested because and you two more than me, but like as a whole, we've done a lot of esports over the years, as it turns out. And someone was curious, like, what was the biggest learning experience from SMITE 1 competitive that we're like kind of carrying into SMITE 2 to that we're like, okay, we know this does work, we know this doesn't work, we know this would be smarter, this would not be smarter. What's the biggest thing that you've noticed is like been the biggest thing you learned, I guess?
You want to go first?
I'll go first. First of all, you're never going to please everyone is answer 1. Like, it's very difficult to balance the books of the company's happy with the results, but also the players really enjoyed the event, but also the viewers really enjoyed the event too. Trying to balance the bucket of all 3 of those things can be quite difficult at times to make sure everyone's satisfied. The biggest thing for me is probably being ahead of seeding a little bit more, because we know people are going to have complaints about seeding not being 100% accurate because we don't have any data to go off is always a hard point for us, but continue to work through that in the future, but also listen to the community of what they want. Realistically, double elimination has been something asked for at events for a long time, and then other events where you're not playing the same thing in and out all the time has also been a request too. So playing with the Swiss this time round is a reason for doing that, to try and give an opportunity for changing it or mixing it up a little bit. But still, at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do with a MOBA esport, as I've said a few times, but really exploring those avenues where possible. So yeah, for me, it really is accepting you can't please everyone, but do your best to please as many people as possible.
I also like Opwash's answer in chat, because he just said the biggest thing that we learned is that Paul's really good at SMITE, and apparently that transcends 1 or 2. He's just good. Yeah. It has been, also, by the way, so we're reading from Twitch chat. I also have, if you go to discord.gg/SMITE Esports, There's a Q&A text channel if you don't feel like talking to us. We're also willing to do live Q&A, and I'm looking at it, and I see that the waiting room is empty. If you join that, we are absolutely willing to take a very, very big risk and put you live on the air on the internet.
There was a lot of questions in the Discord as well that were asked. I'll say one that's in chat right now that I can see was from Aztec, who's said this a few times. Why do you want to make the first esports tournament in an alpha phase of a game, knowing the game can have bugs affecting results of certain matches? Being real with you, there's never a right time to start esports in a weird way, but we know that the SMITE community is super passionate about esports. And the announcement of SMITE 2 coming, we were always going to do esports at the initial interim, at the initial start of the game. That's what we're doing. I will say, obviously, we're in the early days. It is an alpha. There is going to be bugs. But guess what? Over 10 years of SMITE esports, we did have bugs, we did have issues, and we did get through them. Sure, there will be stuff that may impact matches, but we have to be aware of those and accept those as a possible thing, the same way you guys are playing a live game that gets updated. If it's a stagnant game that isn't getting updated week in, week out, it's a lot easier to prevent bugs, but we're a live service game, we always have been. We're always going to have new patches and stuff that's going to come through, so saying about bugs being an issue, they're always going to be there, unfortunately, just different ones every single week. That's just part of the game. We have to play with it to an extent. Sure, it might be early, but that's why when you look at the scope of what we're looking to do here is really just dial it in as an alpha experience to begin with and grow as the game grows too.
We're also in a little bit of a unique spot that it's not an entirely new game, right?
True.
Like, we've had 10 years of players who have built their livelihood around this game, and now that SMITE 1 Esports has kind of closed its chapter, they're kind of itching for something to do as well, and that's a big player base that we want to cater to. So kind of starting this up sooner than later makes sense.
And I'll say, and this is like, I have a degree in computer science, but also if you've just worked with any sort of technology ever, there's no such thing as a fully complete product and B, a bugless product. Like that, literally, it does not exist. It is a myth. And when you start to work with that stuff, it's usually like along the lines of like, can we fix this in time? Half the time it's trying to figure out what's causing it, which is why, like, if you experience a bug, try to reproduce it, or at least tell QA, like when you send a thing into support, what you did that got there, because trying to figure it out is sometimes the most difficult thing in the world. And so it is definitely something, like, it's always going to exist. It's always going to be a thing. It just varies on what it is, which also ties into, because somebody had mentioned, and I think if you were watching like 2 months ago, like during Alpha 2 weekend or Alpha 3 weekend, maybe honestly even Alpha 4 weekend, there were some questions about like Spectator not working and things like that. If you watched last week, there was so much work that got put into Spectator in between Alpha 4 and even just last week.
I'll be honest, they're ahead on that on Spectator too. So, so Spectator improvements will continue to happen.
It's still going to get,
but there is levels to the investment that's there. You've got the community's requesting so many things consistently and passionately that certain things take priority over others. Obviously, if you want more gods in the game, it's not always going to come as quickly as if you want Spectator improvements. It takes time. You've got to balance the books. They are working for Spectator. The devs are working and aware. They will come with time. We're going to grow with it, as always. You know us on esports, guys. We've been going for years with different levels of investment where things are available to us. So we're aware. The company's aware. They're going to continue to work on it. They've already mentioned that in the dev notes too. So.
I'm going to reword this question.
Okay. Why you didn't like the word?
I think it's more
rude?
They're just very specific. I'm going to broaden it up because they were talking, I guess, they were kind of broad about it, but prizing and funding that we would provide for like community tournaments and stuff like we've done in the past. Oh yeah, and this is also from Aztec.
Oh, again, I mean, pricing for community tournaments and stuff. We've already been working on working up some. You've seen SMITE Prime, funny enough, already announced that they're going to be doing a community tournament for Diamond Prize, and it is something we're going to work with the community organizers consistently. Again, other orgs and stuff like that. Specifically, leagues is one thing that people are interested in. We are working on Diamond Prizing for them, just like we did for SMITE 1. It might take a little bit longer as we flesh out exactly the meat and potatoes of that. Main reason I'm saying that is because things will change as like diamond amount change versus gems, but also what the level of investment is going to be for how many teams are taking part. We do want to work with the community tournaments and continue to grow them, and I do think they're a really huge pool of players. Not just the players, but also the people that are staffing those are super passionate for SMITE fans, and we do care about them and try and work with them as much as possible. So yeah.
Slandy had asked, would SMITE be open to a league or circuit that's created for women and marginalized genders, similar to what other games have done for their tournaments and for their games, just because, they always like seeing that. And it has been pretty common that, like esports, and we can even say it about SMITE 1, was pretty male-dominated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but there were also those kind of outliers where we saw some pro non-male competitors kind of compete. So we're always open to that, and I think directly answering the question, we're always open to that too, right? Like if there is an organization out there that has an idea that wants to work with us on putting together a competition like that, please reach out to myself or Graham so we can start those plans and figuring it out. It was actually something that we talked about very early on this year. I think it's still being so early into the alpha, we kind of need to get the core esports down, and then we can start branching out into things like community tournaments and those other types of auxiliary content as well.
Yeah, for me, the focus is like get everybody playing the main one anyway, whatever you
get it rolling first.
Like, everybody be playing and enjoying the game, and then if we can do specific events for specific groups of people, that'd be great. Like we would look to have that opportunity if it makes sense for there's enough people that want to do that as well. That's the main goal for us. Yeah.
Adverse asked, and after this one we'll get in. We have someone who we can pull in as a caller, but I'll ask this one first, which is will there be more live events to go to like Vegas?
Sure. Now, obviously, I'll touch on this real quick. Like, obviously, the keynote last year at the start of the year with SMITE 10, when we did the World Championship, we did say we were trying to do a European event within the first year. Obviously, the goal was actually for September. We've already made that kind of clear of like we were trying to do a European event in September. However, the knock-ons of the game as well really helped us out in some regard of like we all aiming basically to within this next year of after Vegas, we're looking to do a European event. More fan-attended events is still the goal. So we're trying to do it multiple times a year of having fan-attended events in person, which is what we're doing around the major system for the most part. But our goal for next year is definitely a European LAN and a North American LAN. If that changes, I will update you, but that are still our goals. And then we're still aiming to look towards a World Championship for January 26th. Is that date right? 26? Yeah. Yep. Okay, I get confused with that. But yeah, January 26th we'll be looking to aim for the first World Championship 1 is kind of the rough timeline at the moment. That could also change with development of the game and stuff like that. I'm not trying to say the development of the game slowing down or anything, just being real with you. We're in a live environment and we will adapt with esports based off how the game's doing too. But that's currently our timeline.
Speaking of adapting, we'll see how well we adapt to this. We've got someone ready.
Adapting's on the phone.
No, that would have been way cleaner. No, we have, I see the username DiceHeart in the waiting room.
Aussie.
That we can pull in for Q&A. So welcome and hi. What was it, Hindu, you were going to say?
Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Hi, guys. Big shout out from Australia, from OCU. We've got a few of us here getting excited for the fact that you guys want to do something in fall with us, so we're very keen. The question that I've got at the moment is whether or not smaller regions like APAC and Brazil will get access to promotional options like streaming competitive matches on the SMITE Twitch being retweeted to help grow the scene, or even potentially local time slots for competitive players to sort of stream ranked and that sort of stuff. Obviously, a bit of a time difference there, so when you guys are typically, or NAEU would not typically streaming, can we get a sort of time slot to be able to do stuff like that ourselves?
Yeah. I think touching on the competitive aspect of it first, like absolutely. Like I think we have our SMITEPro channel that we always want to kind of elevate and retweet those regions. Now that we're actually having regions a part of our official circuit, we're going to be putting out much more blogs, tweets, info about those regions as to when they're going on. Like we talked about a little earlier, Spectator is still a work in progress, so things like demos, aren't out yet, so we can't exactly kind of replay those games on an official broadcast on Smite Game, but as those tools come out, we'll give them to the community members within those regions to utilize them for themselves. On the community side of things, just around like maybe being a Smite Game streamer or something like that, definitely something that I would defer to the community team on, but I think they're always looking for people that have good followings, they're excited about the game, they're passionate about what they're doing. I don't think they ever have any sort of like, we only take NA and EMEA people. We just got to have that conversation and kind of run it up the chain.
Yeah, that's if we have the opportunity to have people stream on the channel, right, for the specific esports, we want to do it. Like, it just when it makes sense, really, is what I want to get to. I'm not just going to go, hey, Dice, just because you called the show, I'm now going to put you in charge of running it or anything like that. But it is something we want to do, is try and give you guys promotion where possible. Obviously, the Smite Game community channel is a Twitch channel for like everybody, and so we do want to broaden that up to more esports stuff going on when it makes sense for them in their regions.
And I'll also mention,
completely fair.
Yeah, I think in the past, like, and I know this because I irresponsibly would stay up until like 2 a.m. to watch them. But I would there were times where like you know what? It's late at night. You haven't gone to bed yet, and I'd open Smite game and I'd be like, oh wow, there's an OCE tournament going on like literally right now. I'm gonna go ahead and tune in.
Guys, you got any other questions for us?
Yeah.
Or was it just that one, really?
No, I'm very happy. I mean, we're up at 3:30 to catch up on the.
I noticed,
Q&A right now, so
Impressive.
It's early.
It's passion.
We're excited. We've been, just as if I can give a small shout out, we've been running a cheeky little Smite community tournament for the last 2 years, so in Australia. And so we've got a big community together that are really excited to play Smite too. So
Yeah, where can APAC people sign up for that, Dice? Do you know? You got a Discord?
Where can APAC people sign up?
Where can they sign up to join you?
Well, you've got a website now on rallycry.gg/Smite2, but we've also got a Discord link if I can post that in chat.
Sure, do it. Throw it in chat. It'll probably get banned and then someone will untime
And then either someone or the mods will repost it.
You asked for promo, Dice. You're doing your promo right now, so make sure it's right.
I deeply appreciate that. You have no idea how much it means to us to be able to do that. Thank you.
Gosh, you can.
And for, ideally the people who are probably asleep right now, but watching this in the future, sign up for this because this is probably going to be the best place to get any sort of practice before the Founder Series starts up, and also in conjunction with the Founder Series to get that extra practice.
Awesome. Thanks for the
Thanks for your call, Dice.
Yep, thanks for the
guys.
call.
Have a good one.
You
See
too.
you later.
You too. Did you understand the word he said, by the way?
I don't even know what I answered, honestly.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I wasn't sure you guys would understand.
So Aztec had asked another one. I'm going to combine these two.
And Aztec just went on about so many stuff. I will say our Push's question in chat got me as well, which was something we discussed of like, did we choose to color coordinate today?
Oh yeah, that was a good
I definitely felt like we were Tweedledum and
I don't know what the problem is with this. You brought it up and you're like, I have to fix it.
It looks stupid.
People wear blue.
If it makes you feel better, Koo, I've had that exact moment, except someone will walk in, see they're wearing the same thing, and then just go, I'm going to go change, and then leave. And I'm like,
yeah, we're
doing mic checks, bro.
I did go with my car and check. What other question you got?
Used to have, we all had like clothes racks essentially in our backs. Just in case. But the question was plans for picks and bans, because right now there's only one, so as gods come out, and I'm going to lump the next one in because when new gods were coming out in Smite 1, they had a period of time where they were banned out before they were allowed for competitive play. So is there plans to continue doing stuff like that?
Yeah, okay, what we're doing?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we really want to follow along with what's happening in ranked in the game, and obviously that can change very fluidly as well. But our standard, I guess, is if a god comes out and he's banned in ranked, then we'll ban it for competitive until they're available in ranked for at least a week. So that's the standard. Again, that could change. Maybe the rules in ranked change. But we'll see.
Just like any esports that we've done consistently, like if there's a bug that's in the game that's really game breaking and we can't have the god in the game, we'll do a temporary ban on it. We will evolve our ban structure as time goes on with esports. We're starting with one ban. We may explore to expand into 2 bans per team at a certain point in time. We're not going to rush it. Take into account we did Smite 1 from the ground up and went from 1 ban all the way up to 2 bans, 4 bans, yada yada, as you've seen to today. So as the god pool expands, we'll do bans, but we'll also play around with god releases and what knock-on effects they may have with bugs.
Yeah,
because we're a live game. So.
And I'm not saying this is happening, but something we've talked about is this is our kind of our overall thought process with anything with Smite 2 Esports is this is our time to kind of mess around and see what works and what doesn't. So, I mean, picks and bans, even though they've been kind of traditional in the past too, maybe we do something where you can only play one god in that entire set, right? Or you can only pick that god once in that
blow
entire
their brains.
set, rather.
Yeah.
A few times we did that for charity. It was very fun by the time you got to game 5.
We're not trying to have chat.
So we're not doing it.
There's only 23 gods in the game.
Yeah, we're not doing it, but it something like that, don't be
when
surprised.
When there's 200 gods, guys, well, maybe we come back to that. You know what? I think you'll have fun with this. Vaporish Coast asked, can you give me a team name?
Not one that we can put on air.
Yeah, no, I don't want to approve any team name right now.
No, anything that gets said here will be what gets used to sign up on Rallycry.
Yeah.
So I know there was one question because like in the past, and it kind of depends on the time period, and I think that's going to be my caveat at the beginning of this, but there have been opportunities for these community tournaments where like one team will just kind of show up every single week and run the show on that, and they just do that for 3 or 4 different community tournaments. And they were kind of curious if there were any plans of us running like I guess official high res community tournaments But I feel like we have a lot
what's
of
the difference? I guess
we have a lot of open bracket stuff,
would-
which is kind of the same.
We don't. The idea of community tournaments in general is open the doorway to as many people who want to play as possible. There shouldn't be a limiting factor on they can't play because they won one in a sort of regard. And like us, taking ownership of community tournaments in a sense isn't going to change the fact that team wanting to sign up. I think a lot of people get the idea of like, well, this specific group of players always plays in this league or this this tournament. They're allowed to an extent. It's just part of the community growing in a sense. It shouldn't prevent people from signing up or playing or limiting those people.
Yeah,
you got to play with your friends.
If the question was more like maybe like SCC or SOC style stuff that was part of the competitive circuit, probably down the line. I mean, we're kind of not in the stage to talk about a pro league again right now. Yeah. Like Graham said, there are no pros at the moment. So maybe when we start
play soldiers,
building those leagues up, we'll have something that's considered amateur. I feel like maybe I'm leaking too much or talking about too much things that we've talked about. But one of the things that we have talked about is how do we take the amateur tournaments that are already happening, like the community tournaments, and filter them into our competitive circuit somehow officially. So not really any details on that, but these are the things that we're thinking about on how to kind of meld the two scenes together so anyone that wants to play SMITE can compete and eventually win.
Yeah, we'll touch on one question that's kind of in chat. I think it's Gaxi O kind of mentions something about pro players in SMITE wanted to live in Atlanta. Is it going to be the same for SMITE 2, or is EU players going to be able to play their own region? There is no actual pro league as it stands right now. Shockingly, the game's not even out, so I'm not going to have a pro league just yet. Pro league will probably come back in the future. It's not ready for establishment yet. However, there's no plan for a LAN league. You've got to take into account SMITE 1 existed in esports for over 10 years. We had at least 10 years of play, and that grew to a LAN league. It never started as a LAN league to begin with, so expect us to go back to more traditional roots as an esport grows. We'll go through the regional stuff, more so focused there, before we start to maybe season 5, season 5, season SMITE 2, we're looking at a LAN league again. Maybe not even in an NA.
We'll do it in Europe.
Maybe it'll be in Antarctica. Barbados feels kind of nice.
You know what? I like Barbados way more than Antarctica. If we're choosing locations, if I can have a say in,
I just
the one that's cozy
where
and looks, with a nice beach, maybe a little better than the place we potentially freeze.
The Hawaii Pro League. What do you think?
Disney World?
No.
Annual passes for everybody.
The whole time. I'm going to take photos all the time and sign stuff.
I'm going to piggyback off what you kind of just said, because one thing that Sharks had asked was plans to keep for the foreseeable future non-salaried grassroots, and it kind of sounds that way, right? Like with no pro league, at least for the foreseeable future, the tournaments are instead, hey, we're not paying you a salary, but if you play in this tournament, like this tournament where there's prizing in the Swiss, where there's prizing in different regions, where there's $300,000 on the line for Vegas, like that's kind of the idea right now, to keep it more
pretty much
that focus as opposed to cool, here's I don't know, $60K play Vegas, every week for 12 weeks.
Vegas is a good testing litmus test for us to an extent, but also a good early grounds to kind of showcase what we're going to be doing in the future. Expect majors to be like this in the future, where we do qualification paths with pricing attached where possible into the major, which is just one tournament where there's a prize pool on the line, and eventually we'll get to the point of talking about world championships and qualifications for that later on in the year. So that's kind of our structure for the time being for the foreseeable future.
And I'll answer the second half of that just based on what's been said, but so far I don't think any thought has been put into what the format of a pro league will look like, because that's real far down the line. Oh, it has. Never mind, I'm just wrong. No, you're right. You guys have had 30 different whiteboards.
That's right. Yeah, there's been spreadsheets and whiteboards
been
galore,
talked about. So I know, because I think the question was maybe changing it up, but you were talking about keeping it NA, EU, bringing things back. I mean, that's how it started in SMITE 1 as well. Right? It was just, hey, we have different regions. Yeah. You go back to SMITE 1 Worlds, and it was EU versus NA. We had Chinese teams, LATAM teams, all playing against each other, and that led for some really big hype. So I'm maybe something like that, but I don't know if you guys have solidified anything close to a format.
The dream for us is we've got a pro league. The dream for us is that we've got a pro league in every single region that's popping off, and then we have the hardest decision of how many teams you bring from each region, right? Because they're all popping off. That's the goal. It's not our want to not have pro league everywhere, not to have SMITE Esports popping off constantly. If we can do that, we'll give it to you. That's our goal too. We want to see it flourish and exist. We're not trying to limit it in any way, shape, or form. And you should all know that. We're going to do what's best interests for SMITE 2 specifically, but also the longevity of the scene as well. Just like we did for SMITE 1, longevity and consistency was what allowed us to establish and go for 10 years, thanks to the groundwork we laid. It didn't always work out perfectly, but it's never going to. Unfortunately, we can always learn from our mistakes, though, and try and march on forward.
I've got two things. First one, this is for Vinny because you asked nicely in chat, but Giga.
Okay.
And then two, someone was curious if we were having plans on designating personnel to update like a SMITE 2 esports wiki, similar to how the SMITE esports wiki was, I'll admit, something I used a whole lot
Let me
while
tell
we
you,
were
like,
working here.
the SMITE esports wiki was one of the best things that was ever created, and like thankfully, like casters didn't have the time of day to just to do it. But using it as a reference point, as you know, as a caster is great. It is a community thing, though. It always was a community-driven thing. We would love to support it, and I will where we can to try and make sure we get stuff. But I can't guarantee that we're definitely going to have a portal like that to begin with. I am in talks with people though about doing stuff like that, so we'll see. I just can't guarantee it.
Oh, you know what? I haven't thought about this at all. Wax Python asked, console league?
So
Where's console?
we kind of took this approach maybe season 5, 6, I don't know, years ago. But
We were
essentially, our
broadcasting
game,
7 days a week.
yeah, I mean, our game is fully crossplay. We expect that if you're good on console, you sign up on a team and can play with PC players regardless of their platform. You can play with PlayStation players regardless of their platform. You know, so really it's just, you know, if you're good enough, get on a team, and it doesn't matter where you play, you'll be able to compete. So that's going to be our stance moving forward, at least for the time being.
Yeah, for context, everyone will be able to play under one roof, but I'm not going to say for sure that we'll never have a console league the same way I'm not going to say we're going to have a pro league, you know? We'll touch base on that in the future if that does become a viable option. I'm not against it, just to be clear, because I do think console kids kick ass for the most. No, you know, they don't kick ass as humans.
Look at Coast.
They just play well, is what I want to get at. Because
But they pop off.
They do
scream.
pop off. you
Those
know?
guys
Exciting.
are crazy.
exciting.
Every console LAN we've had,
Yeah.
the energy does not matter what they could just be here to play. Like they might not even have a prize pool. Those dudes have more energy in their pinkies than I might have in my entire body. This is, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I feel like we've heard this question literally every year since season 1.
Go on. I'm just going to say no.
It's going to be, have you considered crowdfunding for any tournaments or events? And if no, why not?
With crowdfunding specifically,
Yeah, and that's
crowdfunding
from,
just always comes up as
UK.
an argument. Obviously, there was Coolside and money from this past season 10 that was invested into this year. I know people are like, where is it? But it is being invested, as you can tell, into the running of the scene in the future. I'll touch base on that future more often than not in terms of crowdfunding in any tournaments regarding doing that. But it is definitely the case of there is prize pools attached that come from, you know, the budget as well in terms of what they're investing in esports. We're not completely against it, but it's also just going to work out mental math wise of we can't expect to have a skin that just funds everything. It's just not going to work that way. There's a lot more that goes into it other than just the prize pool. So, yeah.
Vicar Fortunato wants to know, how will Hi-Rez be ensuring that there's ample amount of times for other regions to get their visas to ensure competitive landscape at LAN events, which is actually part of the reason Brazil is having their own event, is because their visa time is like really long.
Yeah. So this is really a moving forward, looking ahead type of question. You know, next year, because we can kind of just hit the ground running immediately after the Vegas LAN, we can build our schedule to make sure that when we do these regional competitions, they have enough lead time to actually get visas. Because this is kind of an end of the year tournament for Founder Series, and Vegas had to be on a specific date, it was just really, really hard to get a good competitive circuit going while also having, you know, a month plus time for these players to get visas. Just so everyone knows, like right now, based on looking it up, like Brazil players need like 45 days lead time to even get an appointment for a visa. And that doesn't guarantee that you get approved or denied or anything like that. And then, of course, we got to book flights for you. So it is really
the whole team to have those appointments done.
Every team has to have an appointment. Yeah. So it is really, really tough to get those visas. But the simple, plain answer to your question is, moving forward, we will allow enough time in the schedule to give us the best chance. Obviously, that doesn't guarantee that we will ever be able to get you out. Governments are governments, and we don't know how they operate in terms of approving visas, but we will at least give you the best chance.
And I'll give the advice that I think we gave to a lot of open teams and like challenger circuit teams whenever like the Pro League was going through SMITE 1, but have passports up to date as well. Like that helps. You have no idea how much it helps when those are already finished, because getting to the visa part you kind of have to have a lot of the other documents done prior. So like there was a lot of time where I mean, I can't even count the amount of players that we had where it was like they're not going to get a visa in time, or because
the
they
entire
couldn't get
Renegades
their passport in
team
time.
back in the day, they were 3 months late. So it's an unfortunate part of our industry.
Yeah.
I think all across the board, people are kind of seeing the ripple effects of today's climate. So it'll be a challenge, but we know how to kind of go through that and get you the appropriate visas as possible. One other note I'll call on too is we will be having checkpoints throughout the competition phase to make sure that you are collecting things like making sure your passport is up to date and you have your necessary appointments scheduled. If you don't do those things in a timely enough manner, we will have to invite other teams. That way we don't end up in a situation where it's a week before Vegas and a team has to drop out. We're going to kind of set things up so that we know who's going to the event prior to.
Get a head stay.
I'm not going to read this question. I'm just going to answer it real quick because it's a lot of like technical stuff in Smite, replays, demos, things like that. Eventually. Honestly, it's the dev team. It's a big game and they're working on a whole lot right now.
Definitely. Like obviously esports is part of the development process and they are aware of it and they are working on it. We will get more and more functionality towards spectator as well as, pause functionality. Everyone wants everything at the moment. That you all want a better rank scene, you all want better rank matchmaking, you also all want better, got more gods in the game, yada yada yada. Obviously, esports needs factors too. It is being built on. It is a work in progress, and it will continue to be so. And we'll keep delivering the best we can with the tools we've got available. And you guys hopefully continue to enjoy it and see the improvements as time goes on.
I think we might have touched on this slightly earlier, but Genetics asked, given the quick turnaround for patches, because I believe they've said 3 weeks, 2 new gods every patch.
Sure.
What will be the rules?
The rules will be whatever upsets genetics the most.
Pretty much. That was my
will
answer.
be the rules.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
They'll both immediately be not only playable, but just by any team you're not on.
Yeah.
When and if
think is what they're
Yemoja comes
getting
in, banned. Like,
Yeah.
it's not available.
If he likes Yemoja, ban it. If he doesn't like Yemoja, leave it in. That's kind of the rules. So just keep an eye on Genetics' Twitter account and whatever he's not liking or liking is the rule set. So yeah.
Oh, I should have not been listening and reading for more questions at that point because
We've done a ton anyway.
There are a ton, and I will admit, like guys, there are a lot that have kind of repeated certain things, but like regions outside NA EMEA expected within the Vegas qualifying pathway. LATAM's coming. We got to talk about that a little bit earlier. There's going to be 2 teams from LATAM. Which now I'm reading somebody did literally answer just right after that, as it turns out, which is why you need to read first, ask questions later. So while I go through the last few, because there's only a few more in the Esports Discord right now, is there anything else that you guys have that you want to like clarify or say just to have as like final notes?
I think the biggest thing for me is just understand just like the game, we're kind of going through a building process, right? And there's a lot of things, we mentioned it several times here, but there's a lot of things we're going to be trying. We might not get it right the first time. We might not get it right the second time, but, we are going to try new things, things that kind of give it a refreshing take to the scene and hopefully just reinvigorates things that the players have been doing for the past 10 years, right? Kind of going into Smite 2, the game's new, but then competing and having the same pick and ban order on the same map and, the same rules, it can get a little tedious. So we want to try and give it some new life. And, we're doing that with the regions and, of course, the exciting formats that we came up with. So just understand that.
Yeah, it's always going to be an evolving thing as the game grows. But we've also been around through Smite 1 is kind of what I'm going to say is that, listen, we all care about esports here, obviously.
Yes.
We don't do this for the sake of, just a job. We actually do value doing esports and trying to make the best we can. So we've always got the best mindset in mind of trying to do the best for the esports scene in general. It may not always get constraint across, you might not always get that information across to you guys, but that is always our goal in mind, is the longevity and like enjoyment, the passion, the fun that comes with esports. It's always going to be on our full frontal focus, and at the same time we're also going to do what we can to make things as good as possible. Obviously everyone's like, we need more money, we want more prizing, we want more tournaments. We'll do what we can. That's always going to be the call from us. We're trying to do what's in the best interest of everyone involved.
Now, I've found 3 that I like, and I feel like they're a good 3 to potentially end up.
Because I got to use the bathroom soon.
Yeah,
it's taking longer than I thought.
Tiny Hand Raccoon Man had asked.
Raccoon Man, okay.
And this might actually... No, okay, yeah, this gets looped with some other questions I've seen, but expansions for, into China and South Korea, things like that, which very specifically, and Coop, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, trying to get used to it, but APAC is Asian Pacific, so it covers because that's Oceania, but it also covers a whole lot that is north of that as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's a conglomeration of regions there. So basically, if you do live in that area, that's the region you would compete in.
Which will go on Rally Cry when Coop is not sitting right there.
Yes, as soon as I get back to my desk, those registration pages will be up and running. But just note, obviously, there will be server rules attached to that. We don't have servers for every single place on the planet. We're going to have to kind of combine servers a little bit. So for the APAC region, most of the games, if not all, will be played on the Oceania servers. But, that's going to be an evolving thing over time, too, as we get bigger and better.
What else you got, Coop?
One was, and I feel like this is probably in the rules somewhere, but figure it's better to clarify.
Yeah.
Can the same team play the qualifiers for NA and LATAM? You'll be on ping.
Kind of. Kind of. So
let's say you play the Stage 1 open bracket, you don't qualify in the North American Stage 1 open bracket, but then LATAM kicks off Stage 2. You could play in LATAM, however, if you fail there, you lose. That's it. You're out. Technically you could, but you'd have to fail Stage 1 of NA to go and play Stage 2.
Yeah, because once Stage 2 hits an NA and EA, you're locked to that region.
Basically, Stage 2 is locking you to a region, and you will play on that region. That was your choice that you chose to play on that region.
Yeah. Now, if you don't qualify, like Graham said, in that first 2 weeks of open bracket, then the LATAM tournament start up, you can swap then.
Yeah.
What you can't do is obviously play in both of those open brackets at Stage 2.
Don't be greedy.
And then the last one, which just, again, it's more open-ended, feels like a good way to end it, but how do you expect esports and goals for SMITE Esports to change as the game moves between, alpha and beta and then eventually, launch?
For me, I mean, I've said this a few times, but my explanation of SMITE 1 into SMITE 2 really is the evolution of a game into, you've got the established player base of SMITE 1 that's played for a long time. They're going to move over to SMITE 2 over time. But you're also going to get a lot of new kids, a lot of young kids that have never played the game before either. And you're almost going to see an amalgamation of those two coming together, especially in the esports world, where you'll see the established pros, like your Polar Bear Mikes and your Pauls and your famous world champions like Adaptin, playing SMITE 2. But now they're going to be going up against and competing against younger kids that have started playing MOBA for the first time, and SMITE 2 was their first MOBA foray. A lot of like some of the fans that are watching now are just that way, have established over time. So I expect we're going to see like an old guard versus a new guard scene that grows, but not only in the competitive sense, but also the community sense as well. The community is going to evolve from just being a SMITE 1 OG. Well, I remember the SMITE 1 days, but SMITE 2 is a different game. Things are going to adjust, and we have to be adaptable to that change too. Of like, if we get, let's just say we get 10 million new players coming in that have never played SMITE before, you're going to see us push more to a ground that makes sense for new players, but using what we've learned from SMITE 1 along the way.
I think the thing for us, like internally as staff, is like if you were able to just sit in the room with me, with Graham and I, it was almost like we were new employees by how like excited we were to
get to redo it all again.
We get to redo it all, and like when you think about the past couple years of the SPL, for instance, there were some tweaks we could make, but ultimately it really was just kind of a copy paste of like, we know they're going to live here, we know there's going to be a pro league, now we just need to fill in the gaps of when the tournament is and what the format is. But now, like especially heading into next year, we have a blank canvas and we can build it all from the start, and obviously build more interesting formats and kind of have a global scene across the entire year. So
always a goal.
Yeah, it's always a goal, and I think, like Graham said, that'll change based on how the game does, but ultimately we're excited for it.
Let's just say, like, if Southeast Asia has 1 billion players in it 3 months time, we'll be seeing even more investment into Southeast Asia. They're one of the bigger regions then. If it's Europe that explodes, then we'll be doing more in Europe. That's always going to be the focus of navigating along with the game.
And I think that's it. We're good. We've answered a whole ton. I know there's going to be a lot more questions.
Tickets on sale though. That's
make sure.
Friday,
you want to go. Your tickets will be on sale next Friday, September 13th, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central European, 4 p.m. Real time is what Hindu has called it. And for those of you who are in that specific zone, you'll know. So make sure that you're going to pick those up. The next day, September 14th, is when the Founder Series kicks off with the open bracket. You can go to rallycry.gg/smite2 right now. And if you go ahead and start doing that, you can register your teams for a majority of the regions, with one coming within the next 10 minutes from when this is actually going live, just once we let Coop actually physically get out of here. Just make sure that you're hanging out with us watching, and thanks for all the support for SMITE Esports over the years, and hopefully for several how many servals?
Decades.
At least, let's say decades.
Yeah.
If I can retire doing this, you will have made it an absolute dream come true. That would be insane. But yeah, no, thank you all for hanging out. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for being here and being as invested in esports as we are, because we couldn't do this without you wanting it,
Exactly.
right? Like if you didn't want what we were providing, we literally would.
Sure.
I'd probably either be on the street or at really some just boring desk job.
Just make sure you
nothing that would be happy with.
find out more information about everything we discussed today. You should be in blog posts on the website
SMITEPro.com.
at SMITEPro.com, so you can catch us there. Obviously on socials as well, but all this information will be available to you to rehash and go over. And if you get further follow-up questions, reach out. If not, we'll do another one of these in the future.
And without further ado, stay tuned because there's more Casual Friday. But thanks for hanging out for the Q&A.
What was this?
Finger
Why are we
guns.
doing that? Finger.
It's like Apollo.
He's not even in the game yet. Are we still on that?
I think so.
This is awkward.
Yeah.